Welcome to Betrayal Trauma Recovery, BTR.org. I'm Anne. I'm sure you remember what it was like when you were searching for help, maybe for your husband, hoping to find the right program or therapist. That's why I started podcasting. I supported my husband through 7 years of pornography addiction recovery, and not one therapist during that time told me I was experiencing emotional and psychological abuse and sexual coercion. I didn't want any other woman on the planet to be in the dark. If you're like the majority of my listeners, you're experiencing the type of abuse that's invisible and difficult to wrap your head around. Your husband is using porn or having affairs or lying to you, and you're getting the same bad advice about how to improve communication or your relationship. If you need support from women who totally understand, check out our daily group session schedule at btr.org/group. We'd love to see you in a session today. One simple, anonymous way to help spread the word is to subscribe to the Betrayal Trauma Recovery podcast, and will help make this podcast more visible and will help save other women from getting the wrong kind of help, like a couple program that will make this type of abuse worse. For those of you who've subscribed to this podcast, thank you so much. Your support means so much to me. I have my friend with me today, Lindsey, not her real name, and she's actually here in my basement where I record. I was talking to a woman at a conference, and she said, I wasn't meant to live one day at a time. And I thought, that's so true. Like, I want to be able to plan. I want to be able to have peace. I want to be able to have emotional safety. There are obviously painful things that happen no matter how hard we try. We can't avoid them.
Because whether it's betrayal trauma or whether it's a child dying, whatever your trial is that is way too hard, it's not fair.
Yeah. What about your situation left you feeling hopeless?
When I discovered that there's this thing called betrayal trauma. And on top of that, not just betrayal trauma, but also there is secondary trauma, and it's real. You can have secondary trauma from ecclesiastical leaders, from therapists out there, resources out there that claim we help with betrayal trauma, and yet they don't.
If you guys just heard that burp, yes, that was me. Sorry, keep going.
And it's real, and yet I have nowhere to turn because I don't know who is safe.
That's why I created Betrayal Trauma Recovery. So since then, have you developed a system where you can feel like, this is how I would know if someone's safe or not?
Mainly trusting my gut. I mean, learning to trust myself and to trust God. When I feel safe, I feel peace. And if there's something that isn't safe or that feels off, it's almost like a little flag goes off in my brain that says, wait, this is either totally unsafe or I just need to learn more, ask some more questions, and figure out what's going on. Because sometimes people say things in a way that is unsafe, but they didn't intend to say it that way.
Like me. I do it all the time. In fact, right when Lindsey got here, she was like, look at this new pamphlet. And I was like, they took the word abuse off. And I went on how long was it? Maybe 4-minute rant about how mad I was that they removed the word abuse. Yeah. And then I was like, I gotta calm down. And I said a prayer, and I'm feeling fine now. And do you feel safe now?
Absolutely.
But I bet while I was on the rant, you were like, oh, this can't be good. Right? You were like, oh, no, we can't record with her like this. And I was recognizing it. It's funny when I get triggered. I don't know if you think it's funny when you get triggered, but when I get triggered, I think it's funny because I can see it and I'm like, oh, I know I'm doing this. And I have to make that mental shift to say, what would be the most helpful thing to do right now? So I apologize that I went on my rant.
It's been helpful for me to reevaluate my perspective on life. It's really a hard process to do, to say I am questioning everything about what I understand about my world, about my higher power, about my relationships with my family, with my friends. And yet that process of questioning has been, in a lot of ways, very healing for me. And I can feel the growth that I've had over the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I experienced too. And I loved that. Looking back, I didn't so much like when I was going through it.
Absolutely not. It's so hard.
It was miserable.
It is.
But looking back, I'm like, wow, I have changed and I have grown so much. And I'm still growing.
Absolutely.
It's almost like the growth happens in this other place. And then you look back and You're like, whoa, I changed. How did that happen?
It happens in a way that I don't expect. I don't see it coming. And then it happens, and it's this beautiful, amazing thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
One thing that I love about this process is you talk about the sweeping my side of the street. It's totally not about that, because that can be a really dangerous metaphor to use. If you take that out and you just say, this isn't about my side of the street, it's taking this situation that is awful and terrible and ugly and hard and painful and saying, I can either sit here and live in the unmanageable and live in it, and that's okay to do, or I can take it and give it purpose. I can take my suffering and give it something meaningful. Pain with purpose is so much more tolerable than pain that's totally meaningless. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's this idea that if I don't have any reason, this pain is just happening, and it's just going to keep happening, and there's no reason for it, and I can't do anything about it. I mean, I'll go crazy. I will.
Yeah.
And I may still go crazy.
You're not crazy yet. You haven't gone crazy yet.
But to have purpose to it, and for me to say, no, this is not my fault. It's not fair, and I can't control it. But with God, I can make something beautiful out of it.
For me, it was definitely BTR. Actually.
Absolutely.
Because everything that I have now, my children, my house, BTR that I founded, is because of what I went through. Like, I would not have anything that I love and care about and hold dear to my heart now without that. So I'm super grateful that I went through it, because there's no way I could do what I do without it. I think people who haven't been through it have a hard time wrapping their head around like the realities of what happens. I also think it's super cool how for all of us who have been through this, we can understand each other and empathize with each other, but also disagree.
Absolutely.
Right? And have different experiences. And that certain things are helpful for some people that aren't helpful for others. And leave a space open for that. Knowing that emotional health looks pretty much the same. Honesty, accountability, kindness, all that stuff looks the same, but we can get to it from many different ways.
So on the topic of separation, which some women may use to establish safety, Lindsey has done both an in-home separation and now is separated out of her home. Can you tell us why you felt unsafe in your own home?
So when he went through 2 months of acting out behavior without disclosing it to me, that's when I felt unsafe and knew I needed to change something.
Did you feel unsafe before you found out he was lying to you, or was there something in your gut that you knew was wrong and you just didn't have quote unquote evidence until you found out?
I definitely felt uneasy, that's for sure. And I knew that he wasn't communicating with me. But until I really had the direct evidence, I didn't want to move forward yet. And it was only a matter of months.
So once you determined that you felt unsafe and that your husband's behaviors were unsafe, mainly that he had been lying to you, why did you choose an in-home separation for your boundary at that time?
So at that time, I knew I felt unsafe and I knew that something needed to change. It was actually almost a month between me knowing that there was dishonesty happening and me actually coming to the conclusion that an in-home separation was the boundary that I wanted to move forward with, mostly because I just didn't know what to do. I was totally at a loss. But I had some really amazing experiences with meditation that helped me come to the conclusion that I really needed to have safety within my home, and I needed to have a place in my home that could be my safe place. And for me, the easiest way that I could envision that happening would be to have an in-home separation where I could have my bedroom be that safe place.
Let's talk about safety for a minute. So a lot of women listening might think, okay, he was lying to you, and so you felt unsafe. Were there any other evidences that you felt unsafe, which there doesn't need to be, but I want to talk about this because a lot of women think, well, he's not yelling at me. He's not punching walls. He's not screaming in my face. So yeah, I'm safe. when emotionally they might not be safe because they're trusting someone or they're interacting with someone who's lying to their face. Talk about how you came to realize that you deserved more than just, well, he's not yelling at me.
My husband is, in a lot of respects, a good husband and a good father to my children. You know, he's respectful. He helps around the house. He does all the right things on the surface. He doesn't put me down. Obviously, the lying is abuse in and of itself. But for me, it was just these little red flags of each one of those in and of itself isn't totally wrong. But when you look at the big picture and you look at all these little red flags, he's not communicating with me. He's not telling me what he's thinking.
So at the time when you're telling your family, I don't feel safe, I'm going to have an in-home separation, were they like, why don't you feel safe? I'm confused. What is he doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, even to this day, it's something that I'm not sure I have words to capture exactly what it means, which is hard because in a certain sense, you want to feel justified when you're talking to your family or when you're talking to your friends about the actions that you're taking. And so that's been a struggle. It's been kind of a back and forth and just kind of a continuing conversation with my parents, with my siblings, with other people who are aware of what's going on. Just trying to share with them how I'm feeling. And when I do come across a podcast or if I come across a quote that I feel captures what I'm feeling, I'm more inclined to share that with them to help communicate. But it's hard.
Do you feel like you're better at communicating how you feel now than when you first started the in-home separation?
Yes and no. In some ways, obviously, I've definitely grown and read more, listened to more. But in other ways, no, because it's still something that's just hard to describe to somebody who hasn't experienced it themselves. And so for me, one of my personal boundaries for myself has been to say, it's okay for me to not be able to describe what I'm feeling to somebody. That's okay. And it doesn't mean that my feelings are unjustified.
Both that, and then also, it's okay that I can't explain all my reasons why I feel unsafe. But my decision to set a boundary, I don't have to justify it to other people. It's okay. It's just a tough position to be in.
Yeah.
So you were doing an in-house separation for how long?
About a year.
Okay. And during that time, all you could see is he doesn't seem to be interested in meetings, therapy, and that was your indicator that you were probably unsafe because you got somebody with a history of lying to you and someone with a history of using porn.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm thinking right now that those of us who can clearly see through their behavior, right? They're very irritable, are kind of lucky maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, not, but yes. But the behavior is so much more extreme. But the weird thing is, it doesn't mean you're in any less danger from being lied to necessarily.
No.
So I'm not saying that we're lucky. It's just, it's an interesting dilemma. And the spectrum of these abusive behaviors is so vast.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and it can look so different. Okay. So you're separated in your home for about a year. You're living upstairs and he's living in the basement. And I am personal friends with you in the same state, in the same place. And so I know you've been making an effort to have friends come over in the evening when you're lonely, and you've just been learning new skills on how to navigate a life where you've been separated in your home. Then you find out he's been lying to me again. He's been using porn again. We've already been separated in the home. So now what do I do? So talk about how you felt and the process that you went through to determine what steps to take next.
I actually need to back up a little bit because that process started a little bit before I knew that he was lying to me. I had some other pretty big indicators that something was really wrong.
Can you tell us what those were?
I had a conversation with him shortly after one of his therapy appointments. He was on his way out the door, so it was not a good time to be talking, but I had just asked him about how his therapy went, and he was sharing with me about him being in a slump, how they say they're in a slump, that he had shared that with the therapist, and the therapist had been working with him on trying to determine what his motivation for working recovery was, trying to do pros and cons of working recovery and not working recovery. And then he shared a question that the therapist had asked him, and it was basically saying, so how long do you think this is sustainable to stay in this slump? And then he told me that his answer to the therapist had been something to the extent of, well, that depends on my wife. That depends on
Lindsey.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's not okay with me. I don't know if I could put words at the time to why that wasn't okay with me, but that did not feel right. I want his recovery to be his own. I want him to be motivated to do it for his own well-being. And I don't want him to feel that it's okay to not work recovery as long as I'm not making his life unbearable
Or
enough.
harder.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, if she doesn't bug me anymore, then then maybe forever. It just depends on Lindsey.
Mm-hmm. And granted, we talked about that conversation later. He didn't intend it the way that I interpreted it. That said, it still came across really as a big, big red flag for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, that was actually the first time that I had ever considered the reality or the possible reality of an out-of-home separation. And that scared me. It terrified me. So the thought had been planted a couple weeks before.
Before we go on, can you put in words, and I should have asked this before, but I'm just thinking of it now, and it's okay if you can't, because we just talked about that. But can you put into words why, if all other behaviors seem healthy, why lying and porn use to you is unacceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. The lying, it just is a really not okay foundation for any relationship. Because if he's lying about this, who knows what else he could be lying about. And yes, on the surface, the things that I see and experience seem to be okay, but who knows?
It would be interesting to see if someone else were in your situation.
Right. It would be
if
so
she
different.
was like, well, no, these things are really bad. These other things that
Right.
maybe for whatever reason
you're
not
notice.
recognizing
Yeah.
or whatever.
Absolutely.
That would be interesting to know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it would be very different.
Or if she was like, I agree. You know? Who knows? Gail Dines was on the podcast. If you have not heard that episode, please listen to it. She's amazing. She was saying, women, even if nothing else is going on, you cannot accept porn in a relationship, period. It is an abusive act and is not okay.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of you for being like, even though I don't exactly know how these behaviors are affecting me, I know that it is and I will not accept it.
Yeah.
That is a really brave thing to do.
For me personally, pornography is something that goes against my values, my spiritual belief system. So that also has been just a very clear from the start, this is not okay. But I didn't know that anything could be done about it. I would be told by bishops really what felt to me like contradictory statements where it's like, recovery is possible, sobriety is possible, and yet addiction is going to be a lifelong thing. And I didn't get how those two things that felt to me like opposites could both be true.
Mm-hmm. It's possible for him to change, but if he doesn't, it's actually possible for you, the victim, to find peace, to find happiness. It takes a long time to figure out what that looks like and how that's going to go. Because lying and pornography are unacceptable to you, then you start this process of determining what is my next step for safety. I've already done an in-home separation, and it seemed to keep me safe for a little while, but it didn't motivate him to change, which wasn't your point. Your point was just to keep yourself safe. So now you're realizing, I'm not any safer.
Yeah.
How do you decide that you need to increase your boundaries yet again because you're still unsafe toward a out-of-home separation where he moves out of the house?
Yeah, that was a long thought process for me because realistically, the boundary of an in-home separation has a wide range of levels of connection even within that. And I thought about it and I realized I had pretty much explored that range, at least as far as I knew how. We had a period of time fairly early on in the in-home separation where things were awful. He was acting out every week and telling me about it.
When you say acting out, you mean using porn and masturbating?
Yeah. So that was happening on a weekly basis. Felt to me like it was endless. And so that was really hard for me. And at that point in time, our in-home separation was very low contact. Like, I would very much schedule the times when I would be seeing him. It would be family dinner with the kids. And outside of that and maybe a few other things, I was pretty much saying, okay, text me if you're going to walk through the upstairs. So I know that you're walking through the upstairs. Things like that, where I would very much know where he was and where I was and that those were separate places. Versus when things were a lot better, we did spend time together. And he still slept in the basement and I still slept upstairs and I still maintained my bedroom as my safe space. So he wasn't going in my room if I was in the room at all, ever. I had felt like I had explored that range and I felt like I was out of options. And that's a hard place to be because I don't like making decisions from a place where I feel like there's no other options. That was a place where I had to sit for a while to think about, okay, have I really explored
all my options?
All my options.
I think that's really interesting because people don't understand that women married to emotionally abusive men want the relationship to work. And so they try every single option, every single one. And it's only when they are out of options that they think, all right, I have to do this because I'm out of options. Before, when you did the in-house separation, that seemed like the only option at the time, right? Mm-hmm. Or the best option.
It did seem like the best option. I did feel like I had a lot more options when I was making that decision.
What options were you considering at that time? You were considering an out-of-home separation, an in-home
Honestly,
separation?
I didn't even consider an out-of-home at that time.
So
it was pretty much...
It was just like options within an in-home separation?
Or just within our relationship where I could say, okay, I need to not go on dates or I need to have variations in the space, the amount of space that I have. Emotionally, physically.
So then when his abusive behaviors continue, now you're thinking, I've exhausted all those options and now my only option is an out-of-home separation. Does this out-of-home separation include variations?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I know that there is a huge range of options in terms of, does he still spend time at the house? Does he spend time with the kids? Is it really just a different place to sleep? Or is it like we're living in different states? So there's a lot of options within that. It felt like I was at one level and I was jumping up to like 5 levels higher in terms of my boundaries. Yeah. And that's a big jump to make.
I was talking with you while you were trying to make this decision. You would text me and call me and be like, am I thinking through this straight? Are these boundaries appropriate? What do I want to do? So you finally decide, yes, I am going to ask him to move out. Mm-hmm. Your family, again, was confused.
Absolutely.
They're like, why are you asking a perfectly capable, non-violent man who holds down a job, who is active in our church, who is seemingly a good dad to move out? This is confusing to us. At that time, did they understand it anymore, or was it still just baffling to them?
I don't know if I can make a good judgment on that, honestly, because I was in such trauma myself. My perspective on what they were thinking and feeling is probably very skewed.
Eventually, you move forward, regardless of what your perception of how other people felt was. And you're currently separated with him out of the home. Mm-hmm. How have you felt about your level of safety now? Now, before we talk about that, I want to say that it's so difficult to assess your safety in this situation because both scenarios feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Having them stay in the home feels unsafe because they're lying to you and using porn, and it just feels uncomfortable and it's against your value system. And then secondly, having your children's dad move out, the financial ramifications that this might cause, the emotional ramifications, the fact that this could result in divorce, which you don't want, feels unsafe too. Mm-hmm. So it's like, which quote unquote unsafe scenario do I choose and why? Mm-hmm. And the decision is very complex. It's not easy at all. But since you asked him to move out, have you felt, generally speaking, more emotionally safe?
I would say I've felt more at peace. I don't know if I would say more safe because realistically, I don't know. I felt a lot of unease around asking for the out-of-home separation simply for the financial aspect of it. That was another reason why I hesitated for a long time. The conclusion that I came to, and it worked for us, this doesn't work for everyone, was I asked that he cover the cost with extra work. He come up with the cost so that it doesn't dip into our normal finances. So that gave me a lot of peace going into it, saying this is possibly temporary. It could be temporary. And if it is temporary and he does end up moving back in, we end up reconciling and our relationship moves forward in a healthy way, it's not going to impact us negatively in terms of our financial future. My husband in particular, one of the roots of his dishonesty is he wants to fulfill people's expectations of him. And so for me, I made a very conscious decision. I'm not going to outline a plan for him. I'm not going to outline what I need to see in order for this to be better.
Yeah, that's exactly what I teach in the BTR Living Free workshop, that women don't make a list of all the things they want to see. And I explain exactly why you don't want to do that, because it's not strategic to do that. But the type of list that's not going to help you get to safety would be something like, I need you to go to group every week. I need you to go to therapy every week. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. They can fake all of that. They can check off all those boxes, but it doesn't mean anything. It's a good idea to just say, I don't know. I'll keep praying. I'll keep pondering. I'll keep observing. Mm-hmm. And I'll see how it feels.
Yeah.
As your friend, I feel like his behavior right now shows that he's more concerned about his own comfort.
Well, yes.
Than your safety.
Well, absolutely. That's why we're in this place right now. That's the heart of it.
Yeah. I'm mad. I'm mad because I'm your friend and I care about you. And this process to determine whether or not someone is going to actually learn and apply and practice and live healthy behaviors takes a long time.
Mm-hmm. It took me a while to come to terms with the fact that simply because I had started to do my own healing did not mean that he has. Did not mean that he's ready. Did not mean he's committed.
And I think that's why safety first is the best way to go. If you're thinking, I need to establish safety for myself and for my home, and I don't exactly know how to go about that, but safety is the top priority, and I'm going to continue to set boundaries until I feel safe, whatever that looks like, then you're never going to go wrong.
My goal is to keep moving in that direction. One thing that I feel maybe some caution around the word safety is the idea that any relationship, whether it's marriage or just with a friend or a family member, you can't expect there to be no conflict. You can't expect there to be no risks. No. And so I feel some caution around the word safety simply because I don't want to be so focused on the goal of safety that I don't open myself up to deep, meaningful, loving relationships.
That's interesting because I don't feel that way at all. I feel very safe with my close friends and family, but we're getting in fights all the time. But it's a safe space. I'm not abused.
Right.
I'm not lied to. I'm not accused of things.
Right.
I'm not gaslit. So is there conflict? Totally.
Right.
In fact, I'm very confrontational, as are so many of the people around me.
And that makes sense. With your background and your personality, it of course makes sense. But for me, who I am naturally, and I know this about myself, I'm naturally conflict averse.
Right.
I want to be careful about me pushing safety too far.
Or you confusing, I think might be the better word, confusing safety and peace with a complete and total lack of conflict.
Maybe. Because safety can mean not being in pain to some people.
For sure. But I wouldn't say I'm in pain. I mean, I have conflicts that hurt my feelings or whatever, but it's resolvable.
Well, yeah.
With a safe person,
but
you
I guess what I'm
resolve
saying
it.
is...
And so the pain can be resolved, not like uber quickly, but like rather quickly. Like if you get in a conflict, you can resolve it within a week, let's say, which is great. These other conflicts with your spouse or ex-spouse that are unresolvable.
I guess what I'm saying is it's not just like pain from getting feelings hurt, but I want to be open to the pain of growth, the growth in a relationship that may come from conflict that lasts for a while.
Right. But that doesn't mean you're unsafe.
No. But to some people and in some situations, the idea of being in pain, period, may feel unsafe. So, for example, in my relationship with my parents, I have a lot of growth to do there. I feel like that is the pain of growth. Saying that, okay, it's okay for me to feel the pain of saying, I'm wrong sometimes.
Yeah, totally. But that, again, safety is about, is this person lying to you? Are they trying to manipulate you? Are they hurting you on purpose to try and take the attention away from their unhealthy behaviors? So if the person is genuine, they really genuinely care for you, they're not trying to manipulate you. Like my mom, for example, I'll just bring her up. She really wants me to do certain things, and she tries to convince me in a lot of different ways. And could I call it manipulation? Maybe, but not really, because she's very direct about it. I don't like those shoes you're wearing. I don't want you to wear them. Let me tell you the 17 reasons why they're ugly. And then she'll tell me that over and over and over, right? And I'm like, I
let's
like
go
these
shoe
shoes.
shopping together. And
No, she doesn't say that at all. No. She doesn't say, oh, let me buy. No. There's none of that. It's those shoes are ugly. Don't wear them anymore. She's doing that because she genuinely loves and cares about me, which is so different than coming from a place of, I'm trying to hide things from you. I'm trying to make sure that you don't confront me about my abusive behaviors. I think safety with people, even if there's conflict, is totally achievable. So we can agree. We can maybe agree to disagree.
Absolutely. I'm definitely okay with that.
I'm like, wait a minute. No, you can get to safety. You really can.
And I do believe that. I just know that from my perspective, where safety has been a very unclear thing to me and to people who are around me, it can be misinterpreted very easily.
Maybe I need to go back and fix all my podcast episodes. Because I'm always talking about safety, and people are like, well, that means that we never get in an argument, or that means this. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's never meant that. But I'm wondering now, are people interpreting this differently than how I intend it? Which they do all the time.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. There's no way we can ever have a life free of conflict. And actually, we don't want that, right? Which would mean someone is lying or someone isn't sharing.
But I used to think that that's what I would want. I used to think that if I was in conflict in a relationship, that things were not okay. That relationship is not okay.
And I think it depends on what you're having a conflict about. You're having a conflict about your shoes. That relationship is fine.
Right.
If you're having a conflict about whether or not someone is stabbing people, that is not okay. Right? It's not going to be okay ever.
Yeah.
So what are your next steps? Are you feeling like you want to just settle into this?
No, I don't. I don't want to settle into this because this is not my ideal. So for me, on the relationship front, it's a waiting game. Wait and see what happens. See what he does. See how he acts. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, so I'll mention it now. The key to that for me is developing and keeping my relationship with my higher power such that I feel like I can trust my higher power to let me know if something is off. Because realistically, I don't know if he's lying to me. I don't know if he's acting out. There's a lot that I don't know. However, I have had multiple key moments in my relationship with my husband where I know that my higher power has made me aware of things that I did not know.
Do you feel like your relationship with God, I'll just say God since you believe in God and he is who you view as your higher power. Do you feel like your relationship with God has improved over time?
Yes and no. I still struggle with connecting with my higher power on a regular basis. I still struggle with having the motivation to want to do the things that I know I need to do to keep that connection strong.
So boundaries are hard, especially having your husband move out is a very difficult boundary. So if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self and tell her some things about boundaries that you have learned, what would you tell her?
That it's okay not to know what you're doing. Because realistically, I don't know that I would have learned the things that I needed to learn in order to set these boundaries any sooner than I did. Even if I told myself anything, any advice I could have given myself. And that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not have it down right now. And it is something that's going to take time.
I agree. I am now such an expert at boundaries, but I didn't set a boundary at all before my ex was arrested. That was God telling me, let me help you out. You clearly are having problems and just let me do this for you. I feel like that's what happened. And then I was like, thank you. I can breathe now. And then I could figure out how to set boundaries. And I've just basically kept the boundary that God gave to me. Thank goodness. I don't think I ever could have done it otherwise. Going back in time, I'd be like, you're really, really bad at boundaries. That's what I would have told myself. So for women right now who are considering a separation or an in-home separation or an out-of-home separation, do you have any words of wisdom you could share with them?
I just know what I did. Reach out to somebody who may be a little bit ahead of you on the journey, and then the people that are right there in the trenches with you, because it helped to talk it out. It helped me clarify what my thoughts were and my feelings were. And then also being open to guidance from my higher power. I can't honestly say that it's something that I knelt down and prayed about, because that's just not the place I'm at right now. But connecting in other ways and being open.
Yeah, this is a tough journey. It's intense. It's unpredictable. I think peace is a good goal to work toward. I do think it's possible, and boundaries make that possible. I teach women how to create and hold healthy boundaries in the BTR Living Free Workshop. So make sure to check that out at btr.org/workshop. A great big thank you to my friend Lindsey. I'm so thankful for her. She's a great example to me of someone who sets boundaries and is doing the best she can to be as healthy as possible. I genuinely admire her, and I'm grateful for her friendship. If this podcast is helpful to you, please help us reach other women by following or subscribing and giving us a 5-star rating. Thank you for helping other women find us. If you've already purchased a copy of my book, Trauma Mama, Husband Drama, please circle back and give it a 5-star rating. A lot of women are searching for books about betrayal trauma on Amazon, and rating Trauma Mama will help them find this podcast, which is free to everyone. Your donations keep this podcast going. Go to our website, btr.org, scroll to the bottom, click on Support the BTR Podcast. And until next week, stay safe out there.